Yo, what is up, 1004 Nation? Yeah, I'm going to call it the 1004 Nation. If you've never heard me call it that before, it's because I just made it up. Actually, I heard it somewhere else and I copied it. But that's okay. And I don't remember where I copied it from. But what's up, everyone? Thanks for joining us today for the 1004 show. It's episode 75 with Chris Jones of Chris Jones Ink. Ink like writing, not the tattoo. If you are looking at what you should write about, what blog post, what type of content to create, or a tool that you can use to figure out if your articles are strong enough, we're going to give you that. But a really cool piece of information that we're going to do today is a book synopsis on what exactly you need to do to outline the book that you may be thinking about writing. It's episode 75 of the 1004 show with Chris Jones. I've been on his podcast twice. And in 2016, I was the most downloaded episode. So will Chris be the most downloaded on the 1004 show? We'll find out. 1004 Nation. If you love the show, give it a love. Give it a subscribe. Give it a download wherever you're listening. I appreciate you. And if you guys have questions throughout, hit us up. But now, let's get in to this episode. What's the craziest question you've ever been asked?
The craziest question I've ever been asked. Holy cow. That's a good question, and I can't really think of it off the top of my head. What's the craziest question I've ever been asked?
Or like a scenario that you've been in when you were just like, I cannot believe this just happened.
Okay, so the craziest scenario I've ever been in is about 5 years ago on Labor Day weekend, we had a house fire. And we're all dead asleep in the middle of the night. My wife wakes up. She's like, hey, the house is on fire. We got to get out of here. She grabs the baby out of the crib because the fire was over top of his head. So she grabs him out of the crib. She just, nudges me to get up and get out of the house. I run out of the house, and I'm pretty close to naked. I've just got a pair of shorts on, a T-shirt, no shoes, nothing else. And I'm just looking back at the house, watching billows of smoke and fire blow out the front door.
Well,
Craziest scenario.
There you go. I think that's going to pass as it. You're a writer. You write a lot. Did you lose a lot of journals and like really important kind of business and sentimental pieces in that?
I did. I did lose. I had a big blue chest, one of those kind of old school chests. I had a big blue chest full of writing, full of drawings, sketches, sketchbooks. I lost all those. I had a good deal of stuff in my computer that was backed up to the cloud. Because the cloud was kind of new back in 2012, people were just getting into it, and I'm one of those people. I try to early adapt to stuff like that, and so I had a bunch of my client stuff in the cloud, a bunch of my stuff in the cloud. But yeah, I lost a lot of good handwritten stuff.
About a year and a half ago, my home, after I believe it was Hurricane Matthew, we were out of town when that hurricane came through, and for most people it wasn't that bad. But when we got home, walked into the house and was like, what's that smell? Well, our windows didn't work. And basically the entire side of the home got wet and never dried. And so it molded out for, I guess for like, it took a couple of days, but then it molded out. And then so we had to get the entire thing revamped and everything. But we lost some pictures in it. And I remember we just threw them away, and insurance paid us for the pictures back, like what they would have cost, whatever. But I remember, looking back right afterwards, because I threw them away, and a guy on my team who's a designer is like, "Why didn't you just give them to me? I could have photoshopped the issues out." And I was like, "Oh man!" Like
I know,
like we're in this, like, to lose something like that is so important, and you don't think about paper anymore. Like I still take handwritten notes, but not everyone does. So. How did you become an early adopter, though? Because I think a lot of people, we were talking a little bit about just podcasting in general. You have a podcast as well. Like, early adopting is risky. So how do you make sure that you don't lose the stuff that you use while doing something that's risky and early adopting?
I think it depends, because when new apps come out, I try all different types of things all the time, but I always make sure that I keep my core things. Like if I'm going to try something new, like hypothetically, let's say like Google Keep was brand new tomorrow. And so I'm a big time Evernote user. I'll still maintain my notes in Evernote, but I'll have a duplicate set in Google Keep just to see how I like the technology. And if I decide that I like the technology, I keep moving forward with it and I follow all the updates. If I decide I don't like the technology, then I scrap it. But I've always got my Evernote.
I think one of the biggest challenges with technology in general is, so we use Basecamp for our project management tools, and we have been using them 7-8 years probably.
Yeah.
It would be so difficult to move everything off of there to a different thing that they got us for $30 a month because they know that we're going to get there. And so how do you then switch from an Evernote to a Google Keep or whatever the next thing would be if you're ready?
Well, the cool thing about those two is that you can, with Evernote, you can download all of your notes and then you can just upload them in. So technology gets to the point now where it's almost transferable depending on the type of technology you're doing. Kind of like when you're using accounting software and you say, okay, I'm going to download all of my stuff, all of my records from this one and upload it into that one. It's technology kind of flows the same way, at least the technology that I use for my business and for what I need. I'm not sure how people with larger technological needs would operate, but it works for me.
Yeah, big teams, big risk. You got thousands of people.
Right on.
Yeah, so ChrisJonesInc.com. How long have you been a writer?
I started writing in 2001. 2001, I became a writer for the first time professionally. I'd grown up writing things, but like on a professional level, I started off on the newspaper side as a sports writer in 2001. Did that for a little bit, and I toggled between my love of being a graphic designer, which is what my degree is in, and being a writer for a number of years, back and forth. And then finally, my wife, she wasn't my wife at the time; she was my girlfriend at the time. She's like, hey, you seem to light up when you talk about writing. You seem really burdened by being a graphic designer. Why don't you switch into writing? So that's what I decided to do. I was like, you see sometimes people see things in you that you don't see in yourself, or they see your situation from a perspective that you don't fully understand or see all the time because you're so on the front lines of your own life. And so I decided that I would give that a shot. And then since about 2012 to now, I've been full-time in writing.
How old are you?
I am 41.
You look young.
I am a very young 41.
So that was 16 years ago. So you were 25. That's your first job. Where'd you go to school?
I went to the Art Institute of Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh. Interesting.
Yeah, so I'm a Pitt Panthers fan to counter your West Virginia.
Well, I think that's going to be the end of this interview. I'm sorry. We were just talking, recording this today. It's January 9th, 2018. West Virginia University is number 2 in the country in men's round ball. If you don't know, that's also basketball. This is the first time we've been that highly ranked since the late 50s when the logo, Jerry West, was playing at West Virginia. I think we've been number 1 in like 57 or something like that. So it's a big accomplishment. I think we should be number 1 in the country, though. I have many inappropriate things to say about Pittsburgh, but it's because this is one of those podcasts that is not does not have the explicit content. We're not going to say it. So, what made you get to Virginia?
I grew up in Virginia.
Okay.
I just went there. I went there for school, but I grew up in Virginia. Grew up in a very rural area of Virginia, so all I had were opportunities to write and draw and play outside. So really, my imagination was like my best friend growing up. That's all I really had to rely on.
I think what you talked about your girlfriend at the time, wife now. She said that you lit up when you're talking about writing or you're writing. I think a lot of people want to find something that they love and do it forever.
Yeah.
But they're afraid to. How did you make this a career? How are you doing the things that you love and wake up every morning wanting to do?
I'm completely not risk averse. I will take every risk in the book just to get to what I want. So if there's something I want to do or something I want to try, I look at everything as a process of elimination. So if there are competing ideas I have or competing things I want to do, I'll try them both and just start to eliminate one from the other until I get to where I want to be. So that's kind of how I view kind of my progress. And that's what I mean. And I'm not afraid to ask for what I want. That's what I did with the newspaper. I was a graphic designer at the newspaper, and every day they kept putting in the classified section that they needed a sports writer, and they had no takers. And so realizing that the sports shift was the second shift and I worked first shift, it was a natural opportunity for me to jump on and say, hey, I'll work my first shift, I'll work sports on the second shift, and let's see what happens.
Content is bigger than ever. You agree?
I absolutely agree.
Why are newspapers dying then?
Newspapers are dying because the availability of content is bigger than ever as well. So I open my phone, I can get all of my news off of Twitter. I can get all of my news, depending on the type of news I want, on Snapchat. I can get it on Facebook. I mean, most people get their news first off of Facebook. So that's a lot of it, is that news content is plentiful. It's everywhere you go. You can't go anywhere without finding it.
I agree. But then why aren't they just evolving then? Why aren't they sticking with getting at the times then and creating content on Facebook and making money through mediums like that?
And that's a good question. I think that newspapers should be doing more of that. But they went to a model that I think that turns people off even more, which to me is the pay gating model, where, okay, you can read 2 stories for free, then you got to start paying $9.99 a month. I'm like, okay, well, I can go online and find the exact same story reported by another source that's just as credible without spending my $10 a month on your site. So I think the pay gating, I think they have not found a way to recoup their money online yet. That's kind of my theory on it.
Yeah, there was an article going around, I think through the Wall Street Journal, New York Times. I think both of them have a paywall up. And it was something about jobs in southeastern Virginia. And everyone kept sending it to me. But I'm not a subscriber. And I'm not going to be a subscriber to either of those. And so I couldn't read the article. And then my buddy goes, literally just copy the headline into your Google search, and it will pop up and not give you a pay gate. And he's like, that's the workaround. I'm like, that's ridiculous. So, I mean, people are already figuring out how to do it anyway.
Yeah, they are.
So what type of things do you write about?
So I write a pretty broad spectrum. I write things from human interest to health to biography to personal stories. I write kind of around the gamut, but I like to write mostly the personal stories. I like writing about people. That, to me, people are very interesting, and so I like to be able to find ways to tell stories that way.
If someone is thinking about starting to create content, maybe they want to start a blog, and then it's going to be around the business that they have, how do they get started with content in general?
What I tell people to do is to basically list as many possible topic ideas that you can come up with. If you can roll out 25, 30, 35, 40 ideas, then you're probably going to have no shortage of content. But if you find that you're getting stuck at 10, 11, 12, you may need to work on your idea a little bit more.
So once you have 25 to 50 ideas, what do you then do next? You
start writing. You just start writing up, just draft it all out. Draft as many pieces as you can right out of the top of your head. Doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be pretty. You just kind of get the sloppy first draft out of your head, and then once you got all those put together, then you start to clean them up and get them ready for your website. And then you put together an editorial schedule and start to set, when your post should hit the mainstream.
So for someone like me who is not a good author, how do I clean it up?
You can edit. Well, if you want to self-edit it, what you can do is once you've done the first draft, go back through it, just read through it for continuity's sake. Just say, okay, does transition A work to transition B? Make sure that everything is fluid and smooth. Make sure that you've broken down, your post into digestible pieces. So basically, you'll typically want to tell a really good story coming out of the gate. You'll want to pivot into some sort of example, and then you'll want to put like maybe 2 or 3 illustrations to go with it, and then a conclusion. And then what you can do is you can take that and self-edit it. I mean, if you want to use Grammarly is a pretty decent self-editor. Run it through Grammarly just to make sure that you don't have a lot of major grammatical errors on top of your word grammar check. And you've kind of given yourself 2 layers of grammar checking there. And then you can put it up and go live with it.
I use Grammarly. It helps me a lot. It also does spell check, which for someone who can only type 24 words a minute, it's perfect for. I can do a little bit better than that. What's an editorial schedule?
So an editorial schedule is basically you take a calendar, you pick, you can print a calendar out, you can buy a monthly calendar, whatever. But then you're taking all those posts, and what I like to do is like to put them so I'll write down the title of the post, I'll stick them on the wall, and then I'll organize them in an order that I want to to publish those posts. And then you just open your calendar and say, okay, I want to be publishing content every Thursday. So then you just on your calendar write, the title of the post every single Thursday until you've run out of slots on Thursdays. Then you know that, okay, well, I've got 3 months worth of content. Then I need to start over working on the next 3 months worth of content.
So that's really getting back to your roots as a journalist, if you will.
Yeah,
Would you call yourself a journalist?
I would. Yeah.
Or at least in a previous time. So they're saying that, a story has to be released, every Thursday or whatever it is. It's kind of like your podcast you do it on a certain day. With this show, it used to be Tuesdays every week. Now it's Tuesdays and Fridays. It's just saying that if you don't have this content in line, you can't find those people, you have work to do.
Right, yeah. And it lets your audience know when to expect to hear from you every week so that they get used to knowing that you're going to show up every Thursday or every Friday.
Do you think that matters?
What, when you show up?
Yeah.
I think it does. I think people like regularity more than they would probably admit it.
So I've never thought of it this way, but after talking with you, maybe I will. So developers, designers, all these creatives are really good at that thing, but they're not good at the business side of it. They're not really good at the marketing side of it. I'm going to put writers into that world too, where they're really good at that craft, but maybe not the marketing side of it.
Yeah.
How do you market as someone who is not a marketing whiz or not, trained as a marketer?
You have to go, I guess you have to go where you think your people are, or try to figure out where they are. So, of course, Facebook's natural. Once you've got your content, you can publish it on Facebook. If you're big on Twitter, like to use Twitter, publish it on Twitter. I know a lot of people either are intimidated or just don't understand or like Twitter, but then you've got LinkedIn, depending on the type of content you're trying to publish. If you're publishing stuff that's more in the business space, then you can share it on LinkedIn. If you want to go into Medium is a great place to publish content where you've got an audience that's already baked in. So it's not like your website where you've got to toil and you've got to build. You can actually use an existing platform like Medium that already has people coming to the site already and start sharing content there. But a lot of the marketing is also getting involved in being in the community of other people. So when other people are posting stuff that resonates with you or is very similar to your content, just hopping on to their content and leaving comments or engaging with the people on their site or engaging in people's blog comments. That's how you start to develop community, because then it draws attention back to you because people get interested in what you have to say, or they want to learn more about you, so they go and look at your site or look at your Facebook or whatever the case may be.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So I am a nobody, and I think most people are nobodies, right? Most people don't have... I'm going to consider myself a nobody, right? I have a TV show. I have all these things. I don't have millions of Facebook followers. I don't have millions of Instagram followers or anything like that. So I consider myself a nobody, but I have a lot more attention on me than most people do, right? But you have to start somewhere, right? And so if you are a nobody, how do you get in front of people then? Specifically, so I get what you're saying, like someone's post on Facebook, but like, how do you find that person? How do you know that person's the right thing? How long does this take? Like, what does that actual engagement, deep diving look like?
I think most people follow people longer than we know. I know I follow a lot of people for a long time. There are bloggers that I follow, there are personalities that I follow, and eventually over time, I start getting comfortable with their content and I start interacting with them. But if you're someone who's just purely, just like you said, just a straight nobody, I've got nothing, for a long time you'll talk into the abyss. That's just a given. It happens to everybody. You're going to talk into the black hole. It may be 6 months, it may be 12 months. I remember Jeff Goins talking about how it took him 18 months to break out of that, where he just wrote content every day for the first year of his blog and nobody read it. But then once he cracked the code and got out, then people started going back to his very early stuff and started really wrapping their arms around the stuff he wrote in month 1, month 2, year 1. So there's a lot of I'm just talking to myself right now.
So it really is back to that point then where you're good at a craft, but you have to get out of that craft and let other people see it. You have to network, you have to market, you have to be in those communities, because if you're not going to ever be seen.
Yeah, you have to share. You have to show your work. That's what they always say, show your work. So once you've done it, if you're involved in Facebook groups, I know I'm involved in several Facebook groups, and there's always a promotion day. And so you just, on a Friday or a Thursday, someone will say, hey, promote your newest stuff, and just share your stuff in the promotion days and comment on other people's stuff. But there's this thing that's human nature where people feel the need to reciprocate. You go in and comment on those promotion days and someone's written a blog post, you hop in there and you talk about how much that post resonated with you and how much you liked it. It's almost automatic. It's almost human nature that they're going to go back and do the same for you.
Solid advice. ChrisJonesInc.com is the website. We're talking to Chris Jones, episode 75 of the 1004 show. So you you ghostwrite a lot of books for people, or you have ghostwritten some books for people.
Yeah, I just jumped into the ghostwriting scene. I'm on my second book right now. It's a blast.
What's that process like? Why?
So the pro
Let's start with this. Why should someone even consider writing a book? And then what's the process of getting into it?
so anybody can write a book. You should consider writing a book if you feel like you have some knowledge you want to impart. So let's say you're a business owner and let's say you have patented some amazing way of interior design, per se. You want to share your method with the world. You write a book and you write a book to explain your method to the world. And if you have an audience that feeds into that, you feed that to your audience. Or one of the books that I'm working on, that I just finished working on, is called Mended Faith, and it's a book about a woman who went through a lot of physical and sexual abuse, which this book it fits right in with the market right now. So she took a deep dive into her life and just shared chapter by chapter just her entire life. Segments of how she was abused and how she coped with it and all the bad maladaptions that she had, and then she had a coming to Jesus moment and changed her entire life. And then she shared really that the catalyst for getting over being abused was learning how to forgive. And she talked about how she was able to come to terms with being a forgiving person. So it all depends on your story and your situation, but I think everyone's got a good story. Everyone's got something in them, if they search for it, that can help somebody else.
Interesting. So, from a ghostwriting standpoint, how did you this lady who you were writing with? How do you get her stories into words when you didn't live them?
Well, it's a lot of talking, so it's a lot of conversation. So what we do is we would get together. Sometimes we sit in Starbucks and just shoot the breeze, because initially it's about me trying to hear her voice. Because if you're going to write like somebody, you have to sound like that person. So you have to know how they put sentences together, what they sound like, what word choices that they use, what words they use really frequently that you may need to cut out later. But you get used to being around that person. So you have to almost put yourself in that person's skin, kind of like an actor who's going inside of a role. So then after that, it becomes a lot of audio recording. So you spend a lot of time interviewing over the telephone. And so you break down, you create an outline, I create a synopsis of what each chapter is supposed to look like, what are the big, broad brushstrokes we need to hit, what are some of the finer details we want to talk about, and then we just get to work on doing all the recordings and transcriptions.
I like that. So from a book standpoint, I think actually you asked me this on yours, and I still don't do it. So what kind of because I think whether it's a book, a podcast, a blog post, whatever, I think you probably should have all these things. So what does that kind of outline for a book look like?
So it's a basic synopsis. So it basically starts off with the title of the book, or the working title of the book, the author's name. If you've already know who your editor and book designer are going to be, it's basically almost a light marketing plan so that you don't have to think about all this stuff later. And then you get into who the market is, who are you writing it to, what's your one sentence description, which is kind of like a movie log line. I tell people, think about, when you're watching Netflix and when you're scrolling through Netflix and you look at the little brief description of what the movie's about, you need to be able to captivate people with that. So what is your book about? Then it gets into some of the Amazon categories. What are some of the Amazon categories you think you fit in? What are authors who've written books similar to yours or like yours? What voice are you trying to write in? Are you trying to be a teacher? Are you trying to be, you're trying to share an experience? Are you trying to share a certain knowledge from a personal or professional standpoint? And then we dive into the synopsis. Okay, let's go chapter by chapter and just give me a sentence about what each chapter is supposed to convey.
I now have an outline for my book. Thank you. I'm literally writing all this down. This is
You're
great.
welcome, man.
I just saved $10,000. From a ghostwriting standpoint, what type of price range are people looking at?
It greatly depends on how detailed and lengthy the book is. I typically run about $7,500 for about a 30,000 word book, which is about 140 pages, 150 pages, which is right into the standard person's attention span.
And how long would it take for you to get that out? What's the time frame?
I typically give myself about 4 to 6 months to get it done. 6 months is my long, but yeah, that's typically what it takes to get one of these things completely done after we've worked with your schedule and my schedule and get all the recordings done and pieced together.
So I'm working on another book.
Yeah.
This one is interesting, I think, because It's really because we looked at a piece of content that we have that's really, really popular. Thousands of webinar visitors, views, whatever you want to call it. Thousands of people use it, and it's the one thing that helps people over and over again. And so we've changed the name of this webinar or this piece of content many times, but it's the one thing that's the super deep dive that is very, very helpful. And we decided about, I don't know, 2 months ago, what if we went super deep on this and made it a book? And so before, I think the title was 8 Ways to Grow Your Business by Recycling Content. Okay. So you can kind of get an idea of what it is there. So we're basically just recycling content and sharing people how to do it. Then we changed the webinar to a different, more businessy title, to the 31 Ways to Grow Your Business. Straight up like that. That one, people didn't love that one as much. Or 31 plus ways to grow your business. But now we are basically taking that content and deeper diving into it into a book. And it's called Anomaly: How to Finally Stand Out from the Crowd.
Yeah. I like that.
Do you?
Anomaly. Yeah. No,
you know what's interesting? Anomaly. Like, I don't remember. We had another word before. So I don't know if you've ever seen this, but like, we're really big on one word things.
Yeah.
It doesn't always work, but we try. And so we were looking at different words, and Anomaly was there. And then, you do your Amazon check, make sure there's no other books about it. And then there's not. And you're like, this is interesting. And so there's things about unicorns and Martians and UFOs and all that kind of crap. But it's just interesting that word is so powerful and not used at this point. The working book cover is a large plane with a bunch of like a Airbus, and then it's a bunch of paper, and then a bunch of paper airplanes below it, because those are kind of what everyone is, and you want to be not the paper airplane. I actually didn't get it for the longest time, and then my designer was like, "This is the concept," and I was like, "Oh, all right, I get it now." So that hopefully we'll be releasing soon. You guys can check it out. We do have pre-orders available at startwithhatch.com/anomaly. And anomaly is actually a very difficult word to spell.
Anomaly, yeah.
Yeah, it's ANAMOLY, I believe. Actually, I don't think that's right. I think it's ANO.
ANO.
MALY.
MALY.
See, it's even hard to So I love the book synopsis that you provided. I'm going to be able to use that. I think everyone that's watching.
Well, just be sure that you get both URLs then for Anomaly. Get the right spelling and the wrong spelling.
It's a good idea. That's a good idea. So you started a podcast a couple of years ago. Why get into that world?
The podcast world was the reason I finished my book, actually. No, I wanted to start a podcast because, it was hot. People were getting into it. I was a big fan of Entrepreneur on Fire. John Lee Dumas was always pitching, "Hey, man, hop into the podcasting world. It's great, man. The water's fine." My buddy Jason, him and my friend Eddie, they're out in Arizona. They were in the desert. They're like, "Hey, we're going to start a podcast." And I'm like, "Man, I'm going to do one too." And I was like, "What should I do it on?" I'm like, "I'll do it on writers. That's what I'll do. I'll do it on writing." And then as I was doing it, I was getting caught in that perfection mind trap. And Jason's like, "Dude, just release it. It's not going to be perfect. Your later episodes will get better as you go along." So I just jumped in with both feet, and I've been doing it since.
That's very true. Where you can look back at content and say, "Hey, this is where I was. This is where I am now." I look at some of my, just from the 1004 shows like this, and say, "Wow, I've really improved." But then I look back at certain things from like 11 and 12, 2013, and I'm like, wow, like, I'm glad I did that because I learned a lot from it, but man, I was terrible. So how do you get over that effect and improve from it?
You have to learn to look at your work as an entire body of work. So like you said, just start looking and say, okay, when did I begin? I began in 2011. Am I a better writer now than I was in 2011? Is my writing, am I progressing more now than I did back then? Am I getting more offers and opportunities now than I did even a year ago? So I try to look at it as an entire body of work, because I know that if I don't cringe reading my early stuff, or if I don't cringe listening to my first episode, then I probably haven't grown.
Everyone has questions and they're looking for answers. So that's what I'm going to give to you. It's Ask Zach time, where we help you get answers to your questions so that you can turn those questions into results. Today's question is from the founder of FlipDeck, John Fuller. And FlipDeck's a pretty cool handheld game. I've been able to play it. You guys should check it out. They have a Kickstarter out. You guys can learn about them at flipdeck.com. We'll have all this in the description. John is looking for ways to grow his business. He's looking for ways to improve his marketing. And one way that he's looking to do that is to collect emails. You've probably heard that collecting emails and creating email campaigns is a great way to get in front of your prospect clients. And over the last decade, I've been able to collect tens of thousands of emails and make a lot of money by emailing people and providing them value and then selling them on what they've been asking for, basically. So collecting emails is a great way to grow your business, grow your list. So how do you do it? Well, first off, you want to make sure that you have an email client, like a Gmail, a Hotmail. I don't even know if they still have Hotmail, Yahoo, Outlook. And then you want to set up like a mass email client. Those could be something like a MailChimp, a ConvertKit. We use ActiveCampaign. We use all of those. Some for those, they cost free to a lot of money, depending on how big your list is. But once you have that, you have those things kind of set. Then, how do you collect emails? Well, I'm going to give you guys a series of different ways that you can do this. If you guys have questions that you want me to answer, all you have to do is go to startwithhatch.com/ask. And there, you provide the question that you have, you provide your email and contact information, and we'll get back to you in this segment of Ask Zach. That's the first way to get an email, because look, I just got the email from you. Post in the description on each of your social channels. So whatever your company is doing, and then add something like, stay up to date on what we're doing, and subscribe to our newsletter. Or if you want more information on how to do X, subscribe here. And do that on all of your social channels. If you do a podcast, say, if you want to catch each show delivered to your inbox, sign up here and collect that information. Now, it could be email, name, more contact information, mailing address, phone number, whatever. A lot of these strategies can work for whatever type of contact information you're looking for. I don't think it has to be exclusive to an email. Over the years, we have started collecting more information, mailing addresses from people, phone numbers. Yes, we pick up the phone and call people. If you're on someone else's podcast, like you don't have a podcast, when they're saying, hey, how can you contact us? Say, hey, for more information, go to your URL. That's going to have the sign-up page on there. It's all about sending people to a place where you can collect data and information from them. If you have a website, put a call to action in your footer. Do a Facebook post or a Twitter post saying, hey, stay up to date with all this information about XYZ company here. And then it takes them to a landing page, and that landing page has a pop-up. And from there, guess what happens? They give you their email. Now, if you don't want to have to go and manually do all of this Facebook and Twitter and social media over and over and over again, I got a great tool for you. We use it. It's called Meet Edgar. I'll put this in the description so you guys can check it out. Meet Edgar. They basically are a content scheduling calendar for all of our social media so that we can set it and forget it, just like the rotisserie chicken back in the 90s infomercial ad. Once you get to that page, a great tool also to use is by a company called Sumo. And it's called Welcome Mat, so that it's kind of like a page takeover. So you get to the page and then boom, this thing pops up and it takes over the entire page and says, I'm going to give you this information, give me your email, and then I'll send it to you. That's another great way to do it. If you have a YouTube page, in the video, so you guys might be watching this on YouTube, you could do a bing, and then the thing pops up and it takes you to a subscribe page, or it could be a subscribing for your YouTube page. It's all about collecting data points from people. You can email a target list of people that you already have and ask them to sign up in your list. One thing that I love to do is in the signature of my email, put in something about subscribe to whatever we're working on that day. So right now it's sign up for inbox. And they go to startwithhatch.com/inbox. And then we send them a series of emails, but we get their email first so that we can do that. One of my favorite things to do is if you host a meetup or an event, have a sign-up sheet and have their contact information in there. Then you can add that to yours. You can do a pop-up on a site where it just pops up, similar to the Sumo piece that we just talked about. You could also have a call to action that could be a lead magnet that if you're writing a blog post or there's some sort of further information that you want to provide, they could click that icon and then pop goes up. You can use something, in that case, like a lead pages. We talked about the website footer. You can just have a subscribe button there. And at the end of a blog post or any type of content that you have, you can have something that's for more information. Please contact us here. So if you guys have questions, you can go to startwithhatch.com/ask. Startwithhatch.com/ask. Ask your question. You'll get it answered. So we just told John how he can get more emails. There's a couple of tools that we did talk about. You got to make sure you have an email provider, Gmail, Hotmail, Outlook, Yahoo, and then, or something like that. And then something to send out those emails. So when you're sending out mass emails, what happens is you can't send them all out at once from one provider, or you get in trouble. So you have to do it through one of these providers. And what I like about it is that you can actually track these people. That's why it's so great. MailChimp, ConvertKit, ActiveCampaign. There's plenty others out there as well. A tool that could help you out too, if these tools don't talk to each other, is Zapier. All this will be in the show notes and description. A great tool to schedule your social media is Meet Edgar. And then another great tool to use as well, Sumo, which helps you collect those emails as well. So that's it for Ask Zach, answering your questions so that you can improve your bottom lines and your lifestyles. If you got questions, startwithhatch.com/ask, A-S-K. Back to the show. All right, so is putting together a podcast similar to a book then? So you want to know like your working title, a light marketing plan, like you said. Who is it for? Maybe a description. Are they the same at this point?
It's more like writing blog posts, actually.
Okay. So what's intended in that for a blog post?
So for me, what I do is when I invite someone to my podcast, I reach out to them and we talk about the subjects. Okay, so here's my podcast, here's my audience. This is your expertise. Can you talk about this and stay on this target? Or somebody will pitch me and say, hey, I want to talk about this in your podcast. And if it's great, we'll take it. If not, I'll say, well, I like that, but can we focus more on this? So then we get the topic together, then I develop the questions, and then we rock and roll from there. And then it's like creating an editorial calendar. So I know, my next 4 or 5 or 6 podcasts are going to be these next 4 or 5 or 6 guests on this particular topic. And then if I need to shuffle people around because I'm bunching up too many marketing people and not enough authors, then I shuffle them around.
What tools do you use to make sure that the podcast goes off without a hitch?
Tools in terms of like...
Well, my guess is you use Libsyn.
Oh, yeah,
or something like
so,
that.
Gotcha.
Editing software.
Yeah, so for editing, I use Adobe Audition. And depending on the podcast and depending on my time frame, I'll outsource my editing just to save me some additional time. But I use Adobe Audition for that, and then I use Auphonic to do some of the toning for me. It helps out with leveling out some of the sound. And then I put some Libsyn. I use Photoshop to do all my artwork. Put all my artwork into Libsyn. Then I move into WordPress. Drop my artwork into WordPress. Put the together there, and use Pretty Link to mask the URL. And I'm ready to roll at that point. Schedule out for the day it needs to go out, and then I go and I hop into MailerLite, which is my email handler, and I put together the email that's going to go out to my list to let them know that there's a new episode available.
A lot of work for one episode.
It really is. I mean, thank God for Libsyn, because Libsyn does cut a lot of the additional stuff out for me, like social media scheduling. Like Libsyn will do all that stuff for me, so that helps out a lot. But as far as getting things from recording to post, Yeah, there are a few steps, but it's easier the more you do it.
How do you market a book, a podcast, a blog post?
I use to market my podcast. I market my podcast on social media. So I use it in my Facebook group. I use it on Facebook. I use it on Twitter. I use it on LinkedIn. I circle it around those areas. Depending on who is on my podcast, they market it as well. Or if I'm referencing a particular tool, like one of my most popular podcasts was one I did on Scrivener. I'm not Scrivener, but Evernote. I did a podcast about the uses for Evernote for writers, and then Evernote picked it up and they loved it. They were, oh, this is a great podcast, and they started sharing it with all of their channels. Mm. So, if in a situation like that, I always mention particular people that I use, or if I'm using a tool, I'll mention them on Twitter and hope that they'll pick it up. But that's what I typically do, is send it out that way. Same thing with the blog posts, same exact way. And then with the book's a lot different. I'm more of a hands-on approach to the book. If I can get in front of people with that, along with using online, like if I can go to networking opportunities or book festivals or whatever the case may be, then the book has more of a boots on the ground strategy than the other two because they're online.
It's interesting that you talked about that strategy, because I think a lot of people think it's a digital world. You don't have to do anything manual anymore. Have you learned that manual work is a lot more effective?
I think so. I think people buy your passion. So when people get to be in front of you and they get to see you talking about your product or talking about your book, or, I mean, one thing my friend Tasha does, which is remarkably brilliant. She's got a book. All of her children's books are about her children. So each book centers around one of her kids doing something really cool. And so when someone will come to her, she'll say, hey, I want you to meet my children. And she'll show her books off, and then she'll find particular pages in the book. And I've learned to do this too. Find a particular page in the book that speaks to that person that you're talking to. So if someone was talking about, yeah, I want to be a writer, but I'm not really sure how to build my website, I'm like, oh, you know what? Here in chapter 13, I talk about how to build websites. Take a look at that. You put the book in their hands, they touch the book, and it's kind of that puppy dog close. Oh, no, just, read the first paragraph, see if that's what you're looking for. Then they end up, buying your book. So it's that old thing of just putting things in people's hands that gets them to buy.
I like that. What's something about you that people don't know about, other than running out of your house when it was on fire in your underwear in 2010?
Dude, I've got a very, very quirky sense of humor. I know people know that I do have a sense of humor, but it's really, really, really quirky. I movie quote or song quote nearly any and everything, and just try to slide it under the radar. And sometimes people notice, sometimes people don't. But I'm a troll. I'm not gonna lie. I love to troll comments on social media, just because for me it's entertaining just to read and watch people kind of go in on each other, or just find humor in situations. I'm like, wow, this is better than watching Chappelle.
So you're one of those people. Thanks, Chris Jones.
I'm one of those.
This is the second time I've wanted to hang up on this call now. First because you like the Pitt Panthers. Now because you're one of those trolls.
Oh man, dude! Just reading people's comments is hilarious. I'm kind of like the Michael Jackson popcorn meme, but a live version.
That's funny. You have a wife and kid?
I do. I've got a wife and I've got 3. I've got a 10-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 2-year-old.
Wow. How do you find the time to write, to work, to
they're kind of integrated into my life, really. So I mean, I've tried so many times to do the work-life balance thing, but I just realized it's just much easier to integrate people and just have it all kind of run into each other. So, I'll write, and then my son will come and hang out, and he's got a little desk over here next to me. He's like, I'm working too, and he'll be drawing pictures and he'll show me pictures while I write, or I'll write early in the morning. I journal in the morning time, but I find pockets of time. I think that's the only way to get it done. I always tell my writers in my group, you can't romanticize writing. You romanticize writing, you're dead in the water. You're not going to have these gobs of hours where you can sit down with a glass of bourbon and a candle and listen to soft music and write for hours. You just got to be able to write with the time you're given. So there are times when I'm at the traffic lights, I'll open up my recorder and I'll record when I'm sitting in my car, or I'll write stuff down in a line at Target, or a good chunk of my book I wrote at Busch Gardens. So it just, I write
because those lines are so damn long.
Exactly. You go find the longest line. It's okay. It's an hour. It's an hour wait for the Griffin. I'll stay in here and I'll write for this hour while I'm waiting for the Griffin. So I get a twofer on that.
So I have a theory. A lot of people hate it. That, and I think you actually, what you're saying is very similar to what it is. But it's basically that it's very hard to be on your A game. It's very hard to be on your A game every day. So we shouldn't try and be on our A games. We should be on our A games when we absolutely need to be. That doesn't mean that you don't practice hard. That doesn't mean that you don't work hard. It just means that when something is super important, you need to make sure that you're prepared and ready for that A game. You likely don't have a bunch of A game things every single day of your life. If you're a professional athlete, maybe you are an Alabama football player, right? You need to be good 14 or 15 days a year, right? Yeah. It's not that you're not preparing beforehand, but you can't be on your A game every single day. It's just, it's impossible. So I tell people, look, don't try and be the greatest thing every single day because you can't. Figure out when you absolutely need to be and make sure that you're ready for that. What do you think?
Oh, no, I agree wholeheartedly. Pat Riley had a thing where he talked about, the difference between having an excellent game and then game excellence, where you're excellent day after day. You're not looking to score 40 every night, but if I can score, 15 and have 10 rebounds every night, I'd rather do that than try to be the guy that, is hot every single day. So it's more about continuity and consistency than about blowing it out of the water every single day.
It's fair. Do you live by a quote, or is there a favorite quote that you love?
Yeah, I do actually. It's right in front of me. It's by Ralph Sherrill. It says, "Avoid the crowd. Do your own thinking independently. Be the chess player, not the chess piece."
Powerful. Chris Jones. You guys can learn about him at chrisjonesinc.com. It's episode 75 of the 1004 show. Chris, I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, man. Great time. I had a great time, Zach, as always.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks for watching this episode of the 1004 show. I want to tell you guys about something that we just released that we're super passionate about. It's called Inbox. It's a series of scenarios that business owners have inevitably had to go through. And what do they do when they go through these? Stuff like, what happens when you get a bad review on social media? Or more deadly, what do you do when a customer tells you that they can't pay you for the work that you've done? Check it out in the show notes or at startwithhatch.com/inbox.